Hello, YouTubers. This is a new session on OData Neo where we continue our development, our progress in developing a new approach of developing the OData protocol, where it's protocol agnostic, technology agnostic, in a simple way, in a simple state. I'm just taking a couple of minutes here before the community joins in, and here is Mr. Nick. How are you doing, sir?
Not bad. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Hey, I intentionally had to push, the meeting just a couple of days forward, just to let kind of the idea marinate. I felt like people kind of got like, especially Paul. Paul was like, I love this idea, it's like he invented fire. love I love that feeling. Like when engineers are like, okay, I have a solution and it's very clear in my head, and then you never sleep for 2 days just working on the particular problem, and then hopefully you come up with something cool. I know what that feeling is. Have you ever been in this situation where you have this idea and you know that if you go to bed, you're not gonna come back to it, so it needs to be done right here, right now?
So I'm going to give you the counterpoint to that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You get to an age where you don't have like your brain just stops functioning at a
Yep.
certain point, and you know you want to,
Yep.
but you can't. And
Yep.
then you wake up like I got into a point where like I'll spend an hour at like 4 in the morning, and
Yep.
I can't get. I wake up the next morning 5 minutes. I'm done, and it's like like you can't. There's I mean my body fails me. So if
Yep.
others
Yep.
don't, great. I'm thrilled for them. But
Yep.
by the way,
Yep.
just a reminder that
And
Prometheus was chained to a mountain and punished for giving fire to humans. So
yep. Yep. That's right. That's right. Hey, I hear a lot of these like, is Prometheus like a Greek mythology kind of thing?
he was
Is that what
I
you?
think he was, I'm not sure if it was a Titan or a god, but he was
Oh,
punished.
okay.
And I think it was the Griffin came and took his liver every day, and his liver regenerated. And then, but he gave fire to
Nice.
humans, right? So, yeah. I mean, Paul may be just the one who like received it. So he's not going to be punished, right?
Yeah,
So
I had this buddy that I worked with. He was super big on, mythologies and all of that stuff, and he came up with this thing called, I think it's popular. People know it, the Cassandra effect, but it's
mhm.
in the software industry, right? So, you know that a particular solution is not gonna work, right?
Mhm.
And you're telling everyone, hey guys, you're about to invest, a couple of years in a solution that is not gonna work, and then nobody believes you. That's the Cassandra kind of curse, right? She knew the
I
truth,
mean, what
but
what if
nobody.
he's right? What I mean, what the
Right.
person
That's it.
it's kind of funny to mention that because like my day job, right, like I support two systems, right, or I run the product, whatever it is. I do
Mhm,
something, I click some keys,
mhm,
and there's one of the systems is just it cannot support the current needs of the business, right?
mhm.
And it's a third party vendor, and you get to a point where you're just like, even if the third party vendor came back and was like, oh, it solves every single one of your problems,
Yep,
it's so
yep,
poisoned at this point that you're just not going to touch it with like a
yep,
1,000 foot pole. And it's like,
yep.
but the thing is like, I wish someone had that insight way back when and said,
Mhm.
oh, this is going to fail as you try to scale to like,
By the way, there probably was, but just people sometimes will be like, nah, what does Nick know? He just joined, you
I
know.
inherited this.
Yep. Yeah.
Oddly enough, like, so I work in the finance industry, and my specific experience is around
What a
a
waste
type
of
of,
time.
sorry.
What fintech is just a waste of time. I'm sorry, I'm super prejudiced. Go ahead. I'm sorry,
It
I'm just
pays.
messing
You
with
ever
you.
see Margin Call?
No, what's that? Is
Margin
that
Call
a
is a
movie?
movie, and it
Okay.
focuses around this particular one focuses around the um, the collapse of the mortgage industry around 2009, and it's a fictitious hedge fund that has a lot of collateralized debt obligations (CDOs) that are backed on these mortgages. Right. By the way, The Big Short's a fantastic
I
movie.
love The Big Short. I
So
love,
this is a little bit more dramatic, right?
yeah.
But in it, there's a dude, and like he sees someone's analysis that kind of reveals that a lot of the company's assets under management are these CDOs, and the valuation is going to sink right?
Yeah.
Like really
Yeah.
rapidly, because they're, you know, the amount of insurance on the market is vastly outweighs. Anyway, the
Yeah.
point being, he, you know, they, you know, they're going to, and the person asks is like, oh, what's your CV? Because she's never, this head of risk never met him before. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, I worked in aeronautics. My PhD, my thesis was on like, you know, like frictionless, you know, air. He's like, they're like, so you're a rocket scientist? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, why are you here? He's like, well, you know, it's all just numbers. He's like, but he's like, also the money is considerably better. And
Yep.
yeah,
That's
so
why
like,
I'm.
yes, you say
Yep.
it's worthless. I don't disagree with you on that,
Yep. Yep.
but
Yep. Yep.
not many people are
I say
motivated.
it's a waste of time, but it's not worthless. These are two different things. Like you're still gonna
True.
make money out of it.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, I know this guy. We used to call him the whale. He's very smart.
Hmm.
He just like think Goodwill Hunting kind of smart.
Yeah.
Okay, like no kidding, Ramanujan. The kind of people that just you just look at them and be like, is that a real person, right? Is
Hmm.
this real? What's happening right now, right? Um, he spends his time in the fintech, right? That guy, if he puts his brain into like robotics, AI, rocket, space, aerospace, whatever that case may be, I know he can boost our industry in ways we can't even imagine, right? Especially that knowing like we could be at the edge of of all of these financial systems coming into an end in terms of how they run today and the
Hmm.
beginning of the crypto age and decentralized systems and all that. Who knows, right? Like
Maybe.
I remember people saying like in the early 60s that the internet, sorry, early 90s, saying that the internet is a fad. It's just
Mm.
gonna go away. The same, I heard that language before. Like people these days say the same thing about cryptocurrencies and these NFTs and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes it's just garbage, right? It's just sometimes just an idea that won't take off. And sometimes they're right. I'm not super big on crypto myself, right? I'm not
Hmm.
gonna lie to you. It's always nice to throw a couple of thousand here or there to, just in case, but it's not like, oh dude, everything should be, cryptocurrency and all that. I like my investment is somewhere else in terms of engineering and all that. But it's
Hmm.
definitely like the one thing I learned in the tech industry is that just like the guy who created COBOL, right? He said there will be no other language after COBOL. He literally said that. He said that's it. This is the final programming language. I hear some people today say stuff like that about JavaScript. I mean, come on, man. Like at least the COBOL guy had, a reason. But anyway, the point is, we're joined today here by Mr. Paul Tewardi. How are you doing, sir?
Hey guys, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? I also work in fintech, and you're
Yeah,
right, it is a complete waste of time.
it's an absolute
And
waste of time.
Let's just remember that money is a fabricated concept, and the fact that we just predicate so much of
But you can make
society on
money
top of it.
anywhere. You can
yeah,
literally,
exactly.
one of the people I personally, admire. I like Elon Musk. I like his mindset. He's not a perfect. He's not an angel, but he's not a demon either. It's not the way that people like to draw him to be. And when you're trying to push the envelope forward, moving data around in fintech seems like a waste of time for someone who is, um, like I look at the two of you. You guys are scary smart. I want you to know that. You think
Not
you're
this guy.
not. You think you're not. I know you think you're not, but this is what I do really. This is why I made a YouTube channel to just sit down and bring people like you and just sit down and be like, it's the same thing with Sam, by the way. This guy's been literally carrying the OData, the identity team on his own shoulders for years and years, and nobody knew nothing about that guy. You had to get really, really close in order for you to know about someone, right? My job is to make him the face of the technology, like to bring the guy all the way up front, so he can, get the credit and recognition he deserves. Because there was a point in time where people said, "Oh, Hassan, oh, data." That's not true. That's really fallacious.
Yeah,
When was the last time you guys heard that word, fallacious? I stole that word from a
Salacious or fallacious?
fallacious, like falsehood, like
Okay.
not true.
Oh,
applying
why
a
don't we just go with
fallacy.
false?
Fal- see the Americans, Paul. What are we gonna do with the Americans? It's a problem. It's a real problem. We have a problem.
I'm
We have a
just
problem.
Listen, I watched Euphoria last night. My mind, like, it does things to you, you know.
I think
So
there's a key point in here is,
yeah.
and it comes down to time. And
Hmm.
from my point of view, like every company I've ever worked for, particularly as a programmer, there's never enough time to achieve what you want to achieve. There's always this push to get
Yeah.
something done quicker. And I think I mentioned it in one of the previous streams. I was watching, is it Robert C. Martin, Uncle
Yep.
Bob?
Yep.
And he talks about, the only way to go well is to go, or the only way to go quickly is to go well, he says.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, going well is a difficult term, but I think what we're talking about here is it's just good working practices rather than trying to just rush things all the time.
There you go.
And I think what I've often found is that, and it's particularly like directors or like high-level managers in big corporate structures, they don't understand the concepts that we're dealing with as programmers. They don't understand that, English as a language is not the same as, C#
Code.
or
Yeah, that's
as
right.
code. Yeah. And the way that a computer functions is purely logical.
Yeah.
And I actually sat down one day with, a CEO. I think it was a CFO of a big Fortune 500 company. And I said, look, if you're a computer thinking about the problem that you have, imagine all you've got is a string of math, essentially, right? And you've got to express your problem as a string of math as the developer to that computer, because you can't tell it in English because it doesn't understand English. It only understands math.
Yep.
So how are you going to do that? And he went, well, I don't see a way out of this because, he said it's a trick question. I said, right, but you've told me, we've just had an hour-long meeting or whatever. And he said, and I said to him, well, you've told me you've got this problem. You want me to solve it. There's an issue with the product, obviously. And you've given me a deadline. And now I've got to go away and explain a whole load of math to a computer. And his answer was, well, you've done that for your whole career. It'll be fine, right? This is what you do. And I'm like, but you don't understand the scale of the problem here, right?
So, God, I have so much to say about this. My career, the trajectory.
It's a different way of thinking.
This is what business analysts are for, right? And this is why we have layers of, we talk about layers of abstraction.
Yeah.
As technologists, this is why we have layers of abstraction in organizations, hierarchies, especially between technology implementers and business users, ultimate end consumers, right? Because that CFO, that CEO doesn't care. And I'm not saying that, like, Grant, there's how you communicate
at his level. It's out of his ability. Yeah.
Right. If someone's going to be
the question they always come back with is, all right, how much is it going to cost me?
That's it. Yeah, that's the question, because that's the language they understand.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is you don't have the right abstractions between you, who either does not or doesn't like, doesn't do, or whatever, that communication, and that layer, right? And if you put the abstraction in there, you may have better results, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
So that abstraction is where we pull in things like, project managers and scrum leaders and stuff. And, and what they effectively do is they try to explain to them in their terms, and then the developers in their terms. And there is this kind of layer in between. But ultimately, there is a disconnect between the corporate world and the technology one. And I think that, for a technology to be popular and successful, it has to relate to people. It has to understand people's problems, And what I always try to do is I look at the real world problem that's out there that somebody's trying to solve, and I'll find a system that already kind of solves that problem, and I'll go, but why is that so complicated? And then you'll look at the code that the developer's written, and you'll think, oh Christ, what were they up against?
Usually when developers or engineers are rushed, they will make things more complex than they need to be, because his brain is running really fast. I'd be like, come on, we have a deadline, we need to get out of there, right? Not that this is a healthy work environment that, you put your engineers under the gun and tell them go ahead and develop, get it done now. That's the kind of Steve Jobs kind of mindset. get it done now. I have a marketing meeting soon, and that kind of stuff. But also, we tend as engineers, if we're rushed or stressed out, we'll make things more complex rather than more simple. Why is that? Because actually simplicity takes a lot of work, brain
Yeah.
power, to actually make something simple. Just because it's simple, it doesn't mean that it's easy. You know what I mean?
You
Um,
always write bad code the first time round. You then refactor it. It's a natural, and the reason for that is, again, that the technology doesn't
yeah,
think the way a human thinks,
yep,
right?
yep,
So what you're doing is you're almost like, because you're trying to think about multiple problems at once in order to get to the bottom of the ultimate, the bigger problem, if you
yep,
like. If you think
yep,
of the bigger problem, in our case, the bigger problem is OData. Okay,
yep,
but there's a lot of smaller problems. Okay, let's start with filtering. That's a
yep,
problem. Okay,
yep,
within that, there's a whole bunch of problems to solve, right?
yep, yep,
So straight up, the developer's like, okay, I've got 3 different levels of problem in my head. I'm currently working on this one.
yep,
Okay, brilliant. But before long, that turns into an absolute mess. And
yep,
then, so what happens is the developer just gets a solution working.
yep,
And if there's a rush in there, it's okay, I ran it once, it did the right thing, it gave me the right output, that's good enough. Commit, push it.
yep,
Stick it in a production environment. Of course, the QA's mentality is,
yep,
how many different ways, 6 ways from Sundays, can I break this?
yep,
So, and this is another thing that I have, problems with trying to explain to like management types, is that QAs have a certain mentality of trying to find all the different ways they can break something. A
yep,
developer's mentality is, what's the one way I can get this to work that is
yep.
the good way that I can reasonably do in the time that I've got. And there is a disconnect even between the two. And both of those two types of people are both highly technical, right?
That's right. That's right.
And so then when you go the level above that, and you've got the sort of less technical project manager that has some understanding of sort of technical keywords, but doesn't really get code,
Yep,
or computers in the same way. But, they're somewhat, they're like a power user in terms of
yep,
how we would
yep,
think
yep.
of them. There's then another disconnect between the developer and those people. And so because of all of these disconnects, what you end up with is that whole the meme with the swing and the different varieties. I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
everybody's seen that by now.
Yeah, of course. Nick, do you know what he's talking about? Do you know the meme with the
Do, but like I said, I got thoughts, right? So as
yeah,
someone who is, like to think, exceptionally technical, but
yeah.
also has taken on a considerable amount of management responsibility in my lifetime, like, so the subject, I mean, like, I apologize if I'm nitpicking around
No, you're
language
fine.
and whatnot here, but like, the way that Paul describes like technologists, QA, etc., implies a siloing and a contentious relationship between these teams, and not a, hey, I understand that you have an area of responsibility and I have an area of responsibility, but the goal is the same. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at it as like, well, I just have to do this. This is simply my job, and I don't have to be aware or think about their job. Where like it, not trying to say like everyone should be kumbaya, but one should
Uh-huh.
take into consideration,
Uh-huh.
how
Uh-huh.
all these pieces are working with each other. And the more that you can communicate between what do you call it? The more that you can communicate between those layers and then communicate that up. In general, I found, and this is anecdotal, but I found that to be more a a driver for advancement and success, right?
This
Because
is it.
you're able to you're
Communication.
able to
Yep.
translate these things
Yep.
between
Yep.
various
This
teams,
this
right?
is it. This is it. This is why engineers that can actually kind of I was just on a podcast with a bunch of really nice folks in Netherlands, and I was just telling them the same thing. I say when I say to engineers is that every group of people need speak a different language. Like if you're in SQL, you're gonna write in SQL. If you're in Visual Studio, you're gonna write in C#, and if you're, writing a web application, maybe you'll do some markup in HTML and CSS, right? So that people, I think people are the same thing. I think people kind of understand things differently. And if you agree with everybody on a certain standard of how problems, like a lot of people, Paul, have you ever heard this? They do this a lot here in the US. They say give the problem a shirt size. Small, medium, large, XX large. I know in Europe you guys don't do XX large, you just shame people to death, don't you? You know,
Yeah,
you're ruthless. You're ruthless. So
whip
something
them
like
harder.
Yeah, just I know, like, I don't know who told me this, but in France, if you are beyond a certain size, they'll just go say pay extra to a tailor, so they do something custom for your size.
Yeah.
Here where we love everybody. you know, Here we have all the sizes. We try to kind of, but I understand the cultures and different and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so Sam had to take a quick call. That's okay. I want to go back. I want to bring us back into this. Um, Really, to me, it's really like a revelation. I'll be honest, Paul. This is pretty good. Start point. Your brain. I don't know how your brain works, but I'm planning to learn that. Just taking uh, just basically I thought in my mind, at the beginning of this project, I thought, okay, we have a string, that's a protocol, and we want to turn that into some strongly typed, objects, just models, right? But I've never, none in a million years, I thought, okay, if we're gonna abstract this, I want to really make it abstract and completely independent, whether it's on the .NET, whatever the case may be. I want to make it easy to translate into a different language without paying too much in terms of what types and what data structures I need to work with. And just for the people who didn't see the last session, you know, we we've come to the conclusion, and then Paul came back and added even this conventions idea, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know, Nick, if you followed up with his, thought in terms of, oh, let's add conventions. So we also, if we determine a certain operation, it needs to match a certain convention, so we know
Mhm.
that this is a healthy structure. Is that what you just let me visualize things for
So,
people first. Let me open up Visual Studio, just we'll see what I'm talking about, and
yeah,
then
I think it's worth revisiting some of the conversation that we've had, sort of from the tail end of the last session into now, essentially,
yep,
through
yep,
Discord, because I think there is still a disconnect at some level
uh-huh,
between me and Nick here. But
yep.
I think that there is a lot that we also agree on as well. Is that fair to say, Nick? Yeah. So I think that there's different ways of looking at it. And to my mind, I think the model should be as simple and as sort of abstract as possible. We don't want to include kind of object orientation principles like inheritance.
I agree.
We just want a very simple data type,
Yep.
and then the implementations, which are going to be very kind of platform specific, that are going to be
Uh-huh.
wrapped around this model, and if you like, the processes of this model.
Mm-hmm.
Those can have all of the kind of framework, or if you like, the language specific features in them, because at that point you're taking advantage of the language features in order to get the
Yep.
language's own implementation as your output, essentially. So
That's the easy route, right? You're leveraging something that
yeah,
is in your existing framework, not the language. The language is okay, I'm okay with that. But you're existing something in your framework or framework by default, because now the .NET framework is not the exclusive kind of framework to run, C# code. You have Mono, you have Daniel Roth was just telling me the other day about this other manifestation of .NET framework that can actually run in the browser with WebAssembly and all that.
Yeah.
So relying on
love it.
that and assuming that this is our go-to, let's not do that. If I learned anything in my 21-year career doing this stuff, is that every time an engineer tries to write something as if they were putting it on a stone, it inevitably ends up being rewritten. And however much they believe their code will need to be changed, however the cost is going to change in changing that code, because this is just a mindset. It's a little bit arrogant to think, oh, I'm going to write this code that's going to live forever and we're never going to change it. And then lo and behold, I want to write this code with a new mindset, a rewritable code. I'm writing it in a way that makes it easy to be rewritten. And
Somebody smarter than me once said to me that
go ahead, go ahead.
the later you make a decision in a project, the less assumptions you have to make about that
Mm,
decision.
mm, mm.
And I think that
I
that
like that.
concept just stuck with me. Like,
Hmm.
if so, thinking about kind of like the previous points that you've put across, right? Getting from a string to this model, should be just as simple as possible parser. Shouldn't make any assumptions, shouldn't
Just
require
one
anything.
responsibility. Yep.
Yeah, dead simple. But then going from that into a framework implementation, that's where all of our assumptions go in.
Yep.
By the way, I hate to put Hassan on the spot, but did you follow up with the Roslyn team?
Oh, not yet. I'm so sorry. You see, the problem
This is why you have action items.
So see, I'll tell you something. I do have a to-do list. I'll be honest with you,
Mandarin
but
guy.
but I'll tell you something though. You're acting like a PM, and I'm warning you. No, just hold that. Hold that.
I'm sorry.
Hold that. No, you're absolutely right. I actually have been meaning to, but I think our last session was on a Thursday. I think it was,
Mhm.
and Friday, Saturday, Sunday is normally. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll be a little bit surprised. I'm actually all over the place. There's so many things I'm trying to run, and usually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I take it to do some other things. So us going into Monday, I'm ready to engage the Roslyn team, but I wouldn't have engaged them before then, and I apologize for that. But that's normally just how I run things, and I'm not making excuses. You're right. I just want
It's
to.
part-time.
It's the start of Lunar New Year. I'll give you a pass.
It's really just my way of scheduling things. But yeah, we'll definitely reach out to them. See, the beautiful thing about this though is that if they gave us a solution outside of the box that does what we want and serializes strings into, we just add bunch of rules and it turns into models. The effort that we're putting into our model today is still going to stay. So that's a good investment. You know what I mean? Because we just want that little magic that happens. And I have to be honest with you. I want to stay, you guys listen to me. I want to stay local as much as possible. I don't want to leverage a native or a third party external library to do the work for me. And I know this is going to be a little bit hard to kind of stay true to, because of the .NET framework and out of the box capabilities in C Sharp makes it so much easier to do things. I was just telling someone yesterday, I know why C Sharp is C Sharp. It's like you're writing music. It's just like you're flowing. It's really, if you understand the language and you have a certain structure in your mind, C Sharp is your friend. It's gonna help you so much make it happen. Dude, I was trying to write Swift on this darn machine the other day just to implement certain, patterns and standards in my mind. Have you guys seen how the inheritance or implementing an interface works in Swift? I almost threw up. I'm gonna have to show you this so I'm not the only one traumatized. This is gonna happen. So I'm
Basically,
trying.
I saw it, so now you have to as well.
Yeah, it's like literally I went through this. Everyone needs to be traumatized right now. That's how it works. So here's Swift. First of all, because the language support is um a little bit interesting because the community backup of Swift, is not as much as other languages, say Java or C++ or whatever the case may be. So Swift implementing an interface. First of all, they don't have a thing called interface. They have a thing called they call it like concept or idea or protocol. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh Lord, okay,
Yeah.
that's a good start. And then you just go through with this, in order for you to be able to, you know how Oscar Wilde, I think, is the one that says this. He says, traveling have proven itself to be fatal to bigotry and racism.
Mm-hmm.
You should do the same when you're working with technology. Don't stick to one thing. So you have this diverse, like I come from Scala background, and people get
Mm-hmm.
surprised by that. They're like, all your content C#.NET. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have that leverage. Kind of, you're thinking ahead always in terms of functional programming language. Anyway, just the point is, what I'm trying to say is C# makes your life a lot easier, especially if you're used to it. If that's the language you've always been working with, it makes things a lot easier. So let's just go back to this piece here. So Sam is back. Hi Sam, how are you doing? You're on mute. Let's see. Did I mute you or did you mute yourself? There you are.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
how you doing? How you doing, Sam? You good?
I'm good.
Love the
And
living room. Love it. Just
it's
messing
it's
with you.
a virtual background. It's not my house. That's
Maybe
my
maybe
that's my dream. That's my
maybe maybe someday, Sam. Maybe
maybe
someday.
someday.
Maybe
Maybe
someday.
tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow. Who knows? We're gonna go with OData Neo, and we're all gonna be millionaires. Is that how it's gonna work?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that. Okay, so here's what we settled on, you guys, just to bring us all back into perspective. We decided that we're gonna build a thing called ONode, and ONode is gonna have some type and some value, and it may or may not have more ONodes within it. And that's technically how we're going to be able to represent, a particular O query, O data query coming into our system. Do we still like that? Or
I would add one more thing to that,
go ahead, Paul.
which is an ONode parent property, so
Okay.
that you can traverse the tree both ways. We don't know how whatever parser or node processing we write is going to function just yet. So it makes sense that when we build these models, we can potentially wire them up in all directions. That said, I think that may incur some complexity in how these models are constructed.
You beat me by 1 second. Let me just get rid of the freaking non-nullable nonsense that, is new, brand new. Disable that
No.
nonsense.
What are you doing?
It's nonsense.
It's there for a reason.
I know. Believe me, I talked to the people that did that. I don't like it. Anyway, let's just let's just go back to this, okay? You'll never ever see me use that file namespace thing. I don't like it. Okay, I think it's not a good idea, but I'm also open-minded. Heck, I'm in the software industry, right?
You'll never see me use it, but I'm open-minded.
Yes. You'll never see me use it. That's how much conviction I have, and then try to challenge that. That's how I'm getting people to kind of say, I am going to change his mind. It's a figure of speech. Come on, Nick. Look alive, man. I'm trying to kind of get you engaged. Anyway, so so Paul is proposing this property. I am against it, but I will hold on to my opinion until we hear everybody else and then see. I mean, he himself, he just said this increases the complexity. The structure should hand that over to you, and then whatever broker, whatever foundation service down the road that's going to pick up that work should be the determiner of whether they want to honor the parenting and keep a reference of the parent or not, because
Yeah,
eventually
so
this will transform.
this poses problems if this ever has to be serialized. If you serialize this, then you run into
Like a
circular
cyclic.
references. Yeah, so and on top of that, so I mean, the question is, does this AST support? Is it implied that any node is hierarchical in nature, right? That there's only one singular parent. If there is, then you can get away with nested nodes in a serialized format, right? If you're never going to serialize it, then who cares? No one cares, right? But I suspect that on some level, this is going to be shuttled across some transports in some way, somewhere, right? Or potentially for debugging purposes or whatever. The way I think of it is that you start with one node and everything just flows from that, right? So in the case where you're doing selects, you're going to have a select of the select portion of a query. You're going to have maybe
you crawl the tree, right?
5 nodes, right? And then those 5 would be the 5 fields, but then those would be expressions, and it could be whatever. And then it just flows down from those 5. But you may need to go back up. That's the responsibility of the implementation. I don't think the data format should be represented of that, because you run into these problems.
What you just said is this is it right there, Paul. This is what Nick just said right there. It wouldn't be a tree anymore if we. No, hold on, Nick. If we assume a node, not just that, but if you assume that we have multiple parents to the same node, it's not a tree anymore, is it?
Well, it's not a tree anymore.
A graph. Now it's a graph.
I don't think you would ever have it, and that's what I'm saying. Take advantage of that implicitness.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I like being explicit, but take advantage of that in this case to help to prevent a headache in the future.
So so the whole point of this model was to represent an OData query and all of its constituent parts, which are by definition a tree, right?
Yeah.
And so to my mind, I was like, okay, when you have a branch on a tree, you can have a parent, The thing that got me about it was the added complexity of having those references two ways, and how might we deal with that. And I sort of thought, in my own mind, it was like it could go either way. If the majority seem to be against it, I'm also against it, because I wasn't 100% convinced.
If you try to model the top level query, so think of it like this, right? An OData request is really the serialization in some sort of format of a query language, right? It's really like SQL in some other form. I'm going to use SQL, but like it's a query language. The thing is, right now, the things that nodes typically represent, right? When we look at OData nodes, is fields or values, or the evaluation of like, how do we get a value from something, right? Not how do we represent the syntax of this like when I say expression, I mean, so like you would need a node type that is like the select portion. You would need a node type that represents the where and the filter and the group and the execute and the apply to, right? So, and I like, if we come to a decision about whether or not you want to encapsulate that in the nodes, right? I would say have something strongly typed in the data model. I'm not talking about CLR strong type, but in the data model that's like request and then select, and then an array of nodes, where an array of nodes, filter, and whatever, right? Where, filter, whatever you want to call it. That way you have some kind of strong typing in the data model, right? One level above. And then these nodes can focus exclusively on the fields or expressions part. And we don't have to add one more thing to represent in the nodes in the form of, oh, what is a select? What is a where? What is a order by?
Okay, I want to throw something too as well. I don't want to think of it as a tree. Let's see if I can kind of get you all riled up and arguing with me for the rest of the day. I don't want to think of it as a tree. I want to think of it as linked list. So they're basically handing over to each other, and it could have nested linked lists within the same node. So if I were to visualize this, if you guys bear with me just 1 second, and then let's take Sam's take on this. We don't let that poor brother say anything when he knows everything, and he's just very humble. You know?
In my mind, I have the whole picture of the abstract search tree, so I try to learn from all of you to maybe can change my mind.
Sam, you're very kind, and I love you for that. I want you to know that, okay? Let me just tell you how I see it. And I'm a simple guy, so just bear with me a second. You know, I see it as your query is coming in. Like if you have a query like this, your query is coming in saying select, right? And you're basically saying name, right? And then you're saying and filter name equal Sam, right? Why are we representing a linear query that's coming in like this that may or may not have nested queries into a tree at all? I know why, because you're looking at this here and you're saying, oh, this is a node. This is a right and a left and an operator, right? So you're saying this is my tree. But let me try to change the mindset here. I mean, it will work either way. But if you take that select equal name and put it here, so that's your select statement, and you take your filter statement and put it in here, and maybe let's say in here I can go and say, you know, and go ahead.
I know why you don't do this. It implies ordering. There's no ordering to any of these groups. All these groups are, you know, the order in which these, so select is a collection of nodes, filter is a collection of nodes, order by is a collection of nodes. Yes, you could do it, but you're implying, there's an implicit declaration by using a linked list that you're saying that select is processed first, where is processed second. That's not the case. That's an implementation detail for the provider down the line, right? Like a linked list kind of you know, don't get me wrong. I don't care if that's the structure it's ultimately used, but ultimately implies direction. Does that direction serve a purpose? I say in this case, no.
Okay.
I say we test it. So add to your select. Let's add inside the select. Let's add an expand.
Yeah, let's go in here.
And then within the expand, we'll add a sub-select and a sub-filter.
Okay.
Now, how do you represent that in a linear fashion such that it can be processed and turned into an expression tree?
We'll see. See, that's the thing, Paul. What I'm saying is that every node of these can have smaller nodes within it. Like this node, this block Think of it as blockchain. Let's get you fintech folks get crazy for a second. So so imagine that you have this inside that guy. So you have your own blocks, right, inside that guy, right? So now you have this system that has multiple queries. Well, I guess I'm painting a tree here, aren't I? It looks like a tree because if you go here and we'll put this in here, what do you get? You get a tree, right? So this is my thought. It's a node that has, but let me ask you an even better question. Does it matter, right? I want to flatten it so people don't get too caught too much on the complexity of trees, right? You're going to get too caught on abstract trees and which branch am I going in or any of that. No, deal with it as a unit of work. This is one unit of work that I need to be done with. This is one unit of work that's completely independent that I need to be done.
I think when
Go
you
ahead.
give it to the thing that's going to eventually translate that, say, into an expression tree, you
Mhm.
are going to have a flat list because you're only going to be translating, if you like,
Right.
the data in the tree that's at one level in a particular, if you like, branch of that
Yep.
tree.
Yep.
And so all you're going to end up with is our framework's going to have some kind of recursion in it that's going to say, hey, do a flat operation here.
Yep.
With this data from the model, essentially.
Ideally, at the end of the day, let me go back to Nick on this one. The order of execution is going to happen anyway because it's a linear operation, right, Nick?
I mean, it depends. Like it will be dependent on the data source, right? Like for example, so the way you have it represented here, and this is why it was done this way. And like select is always the last thing that's done, but here you have it first, right? Like so you put that in a linked list and you put it first. People are going to think, oh, I have to process this first.
Oh, I
But
see
you
what
can't
you're saying.
possibly do it until you've done the rest. Right? Select tells you have to go. Well, first you have to process.
See, I disagree with that. I disagree
Why?
with that. I think the order and the way that a query is defined might validly be defined in different orders for different reasons in different situations. So if I put the filter first,
on the expression level, but I don't agree with the query level. So there's two different. So expressions, absolutely, you have to determine order of operations. This is different than evaluating those values, in my opinion.
See, okay, so I would aim to build an expression tree that is absolutely equal in every way to the query that was passed in, because the expression tree is effectively the .NET version of an OData query.
Okay, take that one level above though, right? According to the OData specification, which we know is open for change, right?
Yep.
Select, like projections, filtering, ordering, etc., are well defined and known, right? Expressions are not. Expressions
is there order specified in the spec? Because I don't think it is.
Yeah, the first step is to try to pass the string to the tree. So in this case, order doesn't matter. But when we apply the tree, the abstract tree to the data source, the order does matter.
Okay.
So select typically behind order by. And we first do the filter, first do the order by, at the last we do the filter, select and expand. And maybe the last part is do the top and skip.
Yeah.
So let's focus on the first part. The first part is try to pass the select the query string to the intermediate language, right? We can say it's the all query, something like this.
Yes.
The order doesn't matter. Order doesn't matter.
Okay. The order doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah. So just pass select is selected, just like we combine the source code, the CSharp file to the object file. The order doesn't matter, but the last part is the link. So link the source file into the executable.
Yeah.
Maybe the order doesn't matter. So here is the same thing, I think.
Can I share my screen? And I'll
Go
show
ahead.
you
Go for it.
Let me see if I could do this. On share screen. Yeah.
It won't show up right away because I have to authorize it. Just share your screen. I'll add it. That's how StreamYard works. Yeah, there you go.
You got it?
There you are.
Random question before we get into this.
Go ahead, Paul.
Is this something that, like, I mean, we talked about reaching out to the Roslyn guys, right?
Yep.
Is query processing something that might be something that we could address with like the SQL team inside of Microsoft?
Well, don't get too attached to technology though. Like I agree, I know where you're going. You want to get the linguistic processing part of it, like the query processing.
I'm thinking more. So we're talking about like orders of things, and does it matter? Surely somebody who's built or works on the code for something like SQL could tell you that outright, right? Because my understanding is that you can get different results from SQL depending on how you define a query. And that sounds really stupid and abstract, but what I mean is like where you put something in a query, its precedence can be important.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So in the case of like an OData question, if I put a select before a filter, I would expect that I can only filter on what I've selected. But if I put a filter before a select, I can filter on something that isn't in the select. Does that make sense? So this is where I'm thinking, hey, there's some precedence here that you could rightly define in a different order. But do you see where I'm going?
Yep.
I see where you're going with this. All right, so this is what I would recommend, right? So originally I was going to say we should have something like this, right, where we just capture, because we know that there's certain clauses, right? But I think Paul does bring up a very important point about the capturing the original intent, the order and whatnot, because it may be relevant, right? So in that case, I would suggest maybe not having O node represent everything, but having something like O clause, where you have something like, you know, public string type. I'm going to set, excuse me. We have get set, and then public, let's see, collection. I apologize. I'm very much into the
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh no, get.
Pretty good coder for a PM though.
Expressions, and then so get set, and then you would have something like public OData query, right, where it really just be read only. And this goes back to linked list. Then in this case, if you model it like this, where you abstract out clause types, and then, you know, something like, you can even do something like public enum clause type, you know, something like 1 filter is equal to order by is equal.
Look at this
3.
old school guy. Doesn't believe in the natural order of things. How about that?
And then you do, and then you have a query. So then this becomes, clause type. And then your query becomes an O clause type, and then
O clause.
You mean O clause, right?
O clause. So yes, O clause. Thank you. Right. So that way, so now you have something. So then get rid of this down here. So we keep the O node, right, which is for the expressions that we need to, you know, do if you're doing something computed, where you get it from your data source, whatever, right? And then that build is put into a clause where you have select or fill, because that's what it is. Now you'll need something specific if you indicate, well,
what if your clause has nested clause?
Has missed a clause?
Has nested clause in it.
What if,
no. So you wouldn't have that.
What if I want a clause that isn't a select, a filter, or an order by, because I'm extending the framework? Because this is a question that we raised last week.
That's the, you know, being able. But so that's two issues now, Nick. Nick, you know that you can do a select. Go back to your screen.
Property into the O clause, Nico.
Hold on. Like, I gotta find it. I'm lost. Hold on. There you go.
See, he just took the screen away and got mad. He rage quit.
No. I'm not trying to do that. Hold on. Let me go back. Here we go. Sorry about that.
I'm just teasing you. Just go ahead, Sam. What are you trying to say?
I mean, if for the nested, we just put a property within O clause class. The type is O clause.
What are we calling it?
Nest clause.
Oh, nested clause. No, see, that complicates things. Now we're making things too complicated. Why are you guys doing that? What's up with engineers and just, you know, why don't you just have, okay, So you know what you're saying right now? You're saying that your raw query is much simpler than what you actually serialized it to. Because your raw query is just a string that uses the exact same material to construct a protocol, while your serialization turned it into this complex, nested objects and types, that may or may not be easy to process. Why are we doing that? Just asking the question, not fighting you. Like, how is having that? What's so problematic about O node that would require us to need new types to express? You have to remember, we're just trying to turn the query, the raw query, into strongly typed query. That's it. That's the responsibility. Stick there and try not to think about what happens
So
next.
if the goal is to create something that's strongly typed, why are you
No,
trying to wipe
no.
it away into a simple abstraction?
I wouldn't say strongly typed query. I would say all we're trying to do is tokenize to get the raw value for each
Tokenize, sure.
component.
Yep.
Yeah, for each component part. This is essentially what happens in a compiler or whatever. You break everything down first. You get your component parts, and then you figure out what bit of machine code you need to build, right?
Yeah.
So to my mind, like breaking it out into the model. And then if you ended up with a like dead simple model that you could just like serialize into JSON, like we were talking about last week, it doesn't have to be really like super strongly typed and superly like well defined, because when you serialize that, you don't care that the class name that it came from was an O clause versus an O
It doesn't matter.
node.
It doesn't matter. That's right.
Yeah, you care that it's structurally correct, so that syntactically in whatever's processing the other end of that, if you've got a serialized version of it, you can just pick that up and build a new O model in some other framework, which might not even use classes. It might just be purely functional. And I think this is where we went last week, where we were talking about, hey, let's get away from the restrictions of using, languages that have particular features or having to strongly type everything, because what this leads to is you then end up having to have base classes and subtypes, and then you have to extend things. And I'm sure we agreed that wasn't a plan that we wanted to go
I don't
down.
want to go that route. I want to stay simple and easy. But to Nick's point, let's see here. To Nick's point, I'm just trying to say, don't take it. Don't you click that blue button. Don't you dare. What is it with you? Are you?
I'm trying to make sure I have nothing questionable on my other tabs in case it goes away.
It's too late now, Nick. Once you share that screen, it's out there. No, I want to tell you guys something though, just so you understand. Just because I'm recording these sessions, any one of you can come at any point in time and say, Hassan, I don't want this to air. And I promise you, God's honest truth, I'll tell you that, you know what, that's okay too. Someone reached out.
I'm good.
Someone reached out to me over Twitter and said something interesting. They're from the SAP team, the SAP team. And he said, it's really refreshing. I didn't like how he put it in terms of, he said, see in the trenches how the actual development is happening. But, that's just an engineer being proud. That's the engineer in me saying, oh, we're not in the trenches. We're building big stuff and all that. But later on, I had to ask someone who natively speaks English, and they said to me, no, that's okay. He's just trying to say, this is where it starts. This is how everything is built from the top. These sessions is all about that, to help people just see how we're thinking through the code is easy. Screw that. Anybody can write code. What are we going to do with that code? That's the question. Let me just circle back to this. Who is in this group likes this approach of separating the expressions from...
No, I'm actually going to backtrack on this. Like,
Why?
if the goal is to just tokenize, the problem with this is that tokenization is in my opinion very different than the lexical parsing, right? So if we're really just looking for tokenizing, I would just say, like, listen, you have a no token, you just do, and then it would be,
why your expression is string.
And then it's just IEnumerable.
Wait. Are you making the expression a string to keep the original statement?
Yes. And then
Nice.
all
Oh,
this becomes is if you have like, what I forgive me, like I'm going to use SQL, but if you have something like
you're fine.
select, name from whatever people, right? Then the tokens, it would be something like this. It would be expression, sorry, type is equal to select clause, and then forgive me, I know it's not like
No. Please go ahead. I know what you're
expression
trying
is
to.
equal to select, and then it would be, type white space, and then, expression, whatever,
So let me just ask you this.
and so
What?
on. But I think you can see where that's going, right?
Right. But let me ask you this. Why do we need to keep track of the original raw query though?
It's not the raw. It's to go to Paul's point. It may be important later for implementations to have the order in order to optimize the output of the final result.
But your
So go
downstream
back.
services shouldn't know about that raw query at all.
So, yeah, I was going to
They
say.
won't. But the thing is, here's the thing. Like we are, the downstream services aren't going to get this. This stream of tokens will go into a parser, which will then convert it to O nodes and whatnot. Right. I'm not saying it's not this is a layer of abstraction on top of it to just say, hey, tokenize it. And is it valid? Right? Are these valid tokens? Is there something that's not junking here? Once you know that you have a valid set of tokens, you can create the O nodes and all of that, right? With the more strongly typed data model. That's the result of your lexical parsing, in my opinion. Sorry. Parsing and no. Tokenizing. Yeah, that's the result of your parsing. In my opinion. Sorry, I apologize.
So,
No. Why are you apologizing? You're fine. Paul, Sam.
yeah, I mean, so leaning on that, if we went back to O nodes and just had a string expression, then that's essentially the same result, isn't it, on every node? If you've got essentially the piece of the query that is the expression that's represented by that node and all of its constituent parts, you've effectively got the same output. My thinking was that O node was the result of that parsing, essentially. So if we took, say, an OData query and did this is very crude, and I realize it doesn't cover all cases, but imagine you've got a typical OData query and you just split by first by the ampersands to break out the parameters. And then you split within those.
Just a reminder, those ampersands aren't necessarily going to be there in Neo. It's not bound to HTTP.
Sure, I'm just looking at the current implementation.
Okay. Keep going. Yes. Oh, you're interesting. Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
And then you split by, say, white space. So in the event that you've got like a filter, your three constituent parts is your left, your operation, your right part, right? That's how we were determining our tokens, essentially. This is very crude, of course. The final implementation will be a lot more advanced than this. You took that, and for each, if you like, token or constituent part that you got out, you generated a node. That was all that I kind of really wanted to achieve with O nodes.
That's the same thing. I share the exact same goal. I just wanna bring that raw string and turn it into something that I can easily hand over to the next level, where they don't have to do that extra string parsing and processing. In my book, that's single responsibility. In my book, this guy is saying, I have one job. I'm the key maker in the matrix. I have one job, and the job is to pick up that raw query and turn it into C# code. That's it. Classes, objects, and that's it. If we can stick to that and agree to that, we can move further. I feel like the only thing, and Nick is not wrong either. He's just thinking, he's going ahead and saying, okay, if you're gonna tokenize, then stay true to that and tokenize, and don't mention anything about OData, right? Which is not wrong, but can we start with this? Let's just pick up that raw string and turn it into something. And by the way, I discovered something while I'm thinking about this entire process to take the conversation to the next level, to Sam's point. I don't think the service that we're building, Sam, is going to be called a filter service. We need a service before all of that that does this transformation. So before you even enter into filter or enter into order by or select or any of that, you need something that spits out strongly typed or tokenized model. Let's put that model in here. That, let's say this is my O node, right? And this guy here is basically the transformation service. And this service produces this thing, this contract, that all of these other services would be listening to in a lakehouse model. Let's just assume for now that we're passing it down to them. And that will allow anybody to plug into that O node that's coming out and do extra processing if needed be. So the ones that come out of the box, like the batteries included in the toy, you have your select service, right? You have your filter service, you have all of these services, into the system, but we still need to get that original transformation service done first before we do anything else. Can we at least agree on that part?
What's the output of the service?
The output of these services in here. So these services will pick up this O node model and take only what it cares about. That this one cares about the selects, right, in your service, and it will turn that into, in our case here, these are foundation services, so it will spit from the other side an expression in here. And that will be the part that is replaceable and disposable, and you can throw away and replace it with anything else. Like for instance, in here, you're returning a .NET C# expression, right? Let's say someone created their own kind of expression model, and they don't want this service to do that work anymore. They can go here and they add in their own service into that stack, listen to that event that's coming out, and say, I don't want that guy anymore. I want Sam's expression instead of a .NET C# expression. And that'll
SQL
work.
expression.
SQL express. Oh, I like that. SQL expression. I don't want this intermediary nonsense. I'm a Dapper guy. I don't want to use the entity framework. I don't want to use any of that nonsense. I'm gonna, spit out directly SQL expression that runs straight through Dapper into my database, right? So in here, you can call this select SQL service, right? And it picks up. So this guy is what I call an integration component that will link the outside world to your, and it will have its own model, of course. It will spit up its own model, but still, it's taking that node and working with it. So think of your node as your message. This part here, you guys, this is the part that needs to be done. We need to somehow take that raw query, and that's where, just to show you the vision here, is that your raw query is coming here, and whoever is handing you this raw query, it doesn't matter. Like beyond that raw query, there could be an ASP.NET API, it could be a gRPC, it could be whatever the case may be. As long as you're giving me a raw OData query, then that's all that this guy cares about. And this is the modularization that I'm dreaming of, to go and say, I'm not tied to ASP.NET anymore. I'm not tied to gRPC, WCF, it doesn't matter. I get that transformation piece and I create that message, and whoever is listening will pick it up and transform it into whatever they want. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with this approach? Bad? Okay, Paul says yes. Nick? Yeah? Sam?
Yeah, so my point is that the going from string to, shall we say, an O-node tree, I don't know if that's what we're actually agreeing at this point, but
Sure.
That piece is kind of like a hard-coded piece. That's our core implementation. That is the thing that we would aim to, if you like, translate.
That's your OData core. Yes. Yes.
To every framework. So we'd have a .NET implementation of that. We'd have a Java implementation of that, Scala implementation of that.
Yep.
And all it's going to do is it's going to spit out this data structure.
Yep.
And then things that want to deal with OData queries effectively, like entity framework might be a consumer of it, for example. Would then implement these things to build out their expression trees or whatever their equivalent is. So in the case of a direct SQL implementation, we might have some sort of SQL provider that has maybe that's the correct word to use based on kind of like the .NET way of thinking, is that you have a provider that contains this collection of like handlers or services that do these things. And EF's way of thinking is that you have conventions, and you map to a thing that handles a convention, so to speak.
See, speaking of conventions, see what you just said, Paul? This is where these services come in and say, oh, I only care about select ONode
Exactly.
types, and now I'm going to apply my convention to see if this fits my purpose or not. And then we can even determine whether the service wants to fail gracefully and say, I'm not interested in handling this. This is someone else's work. Or the service will go and say, no, throw an exception and say this is an invalid query and make a big deal out of it and call the police. Okay, so
or I handled a piece of this, and there's this sub piece that still needs to be handled because it's hierarchical. So
now let me tell you this. This is gonna bother you guys a little bit. This model here is wrong. Why is this wrong? We need an aggregator beyond that layer. Why? This is probably why Sam is giving me the funny look and telling me, hey, you know, you're crazy, you know that. But
this is why I said about providers. So your provider would wrap up your services.
Right.
And
so
your services would wrap up your conventions. So your convention would, when you pass in your model into your provider says, okay, my set of services that do this for expression trees, or my set of services that do this for SQL queries, depending on what type of provider that I am. With that provider, with this set of services, each service has a set of conventions that it handles. In theory, we collectively within this provider can handle this query, and the provider does the aggregation, the services just do the transforms, and the services pick what transforms they want to do based on the conventions that they have defined.
It's almost like you're saying, no, you're, you know what? I'll go and say this much, and you're absolutely right, Paul. I like that. This actually folds a lot better than, you know, what I imagined. Like, let's say this is Nick's service, and this is Paul's service in here. And each one of these services, they could have their own orchestration that they're doing behind the scene to make sure that an entire node is consumed as is and processed however they want this to be processed as. And then the output of this would be whatever output you want to do as an expression. So as your side effect is calling these services or these brokers to kind of process that query however you want to do it. If you want to spit it out as raw SQL, if you want to spit it out as an expression, it will help a lot. People like myself who are die-hard into-tier architecture fans, I would be grateful forever for something like this, because now you're not forcing me to deal with models, external or native models that I don't care about within my core business logic and my architecture. If I want to process an expression or an iQueryable, so be it. So okay, so let me just tell you this. This is the fun part about this. Have you guys played Age of Empires before? Have any one of you played Age of Empires? So okay, so have you played any real-time strategy game where you have to deal with the fog of war?
Oh yeah.
So the more you explore, assume that this is a fog of war in here, that we don't know what's going to happen next, and just let's stick to this guy. And this guy, can we agree on the model of this guy that we're going to take a raw string and turn it into a bunch of nodes? I want to finalize the contract with all of you today, so at least we can jump right into code tomorrow. So check this out. So is this a good expression of our model? We don't need the parent. We talked about that, right? We don't need the parent, but then there's a proposal for raw expression. Does this look good?
I don't think we need that, but I don't see any harm in including it.
I'm not super married to it either, but let's see what Sam says. Sam, do we need that raw expression in there for debugging purposes?
It depends. It depends. For example, if it's a property access, the value itself has the name, so we don't need to have the raw expression. If it's a constant,
what if ONodes have an override of toString that put together all the pieces and build out that raw expression?
I don't like adding, I don't like my models to do actions and contain data at the same time. Like every class should either do the work or delegate the work, should either carry the data or execute on the data, but not both.
Right, but it is effectively just a container, and you're just saying, hey, I want to serialize you in a default. Effectively, it's an override of the default toString.
So you're basically saying, give me a string dot
just like
toString.
expressions do, you know?
Yep. And then just give me the raw expression of this.
Yeah, so it would be like value plus, you know, children dot select, C goes to C dot value, toString, and then you just basically turn those into take that big array and just turn those into a string, and you're done. Join them all up. See what I mean? So, because by extension, you would automatically get the raw expression back out of that if your tokenization has worked. And that would be a nice way of ensuring that we test our model as well, because we could just take an O node, we could build out an O node and all of its children, then we could just do .toString on it. And then in theory, if the unit test spits out the same from the if you like, the tree of O nodes as what we spat in as the original OData query, then both our tokenization and our serialization have worked.
Okay. Let me think about that a little, but other than this raw expression, Sam, do you have any objection to this model here? This, for example, will be these two values might be sometimes, like the value itself might be just empty if it's just a node that has a bunch of nodes in it. But other than that, do you feel, are we okay? Again, Pacha from the Emperor's New Groove. Are we jumping off that waterfall? What do you think, Sam?
It sounds like photo style. I mean, C style structure, data structure. So our goal is to make that as easy to use, easy to adapt.
Right.
So based on this structure, we have to we must have a lot of if blah blah else blah blah.
That's not gonna happen. As God is my witness, if this system starts to have if else, I'm gonna go work as a greeter at Walmart and quit software engineering
We
forever.
want to select based on the type and convert the value, the object value, the box on box every time.
Yeah.
And for the backend, they have to. I mean, the customer have to have the knowledge about the structure, and they have to guess the meaning to make a decision what we'll do the next.
Because they don't know. Well, wouldn't the type tell you? I see what you're saying. You want.
So every node, we don't know the type until we identify the type information.
Right.
But I do think the world have a lot kind of trees.
Yeah.
It can be any node. It can be any trees.
Yeah.
So if you're only using a one node type to represent all the nodes, all the leaves, it's okay. But we have to make the customer hard to use it.
I love that.
From the view of the developer,
yeah,
it's a black and white tree.
Yeah.
No color on the tree.
Yeah.
So so I keep my opinion. So, but I'd like to learn from all of you, because in my mind, that's the existing ordered code using a clear picture of the query node. So I have that knowledge, but I try to understand your design, all of you three, to the design, and to understand the logic.
Yep. So guys, Sam is thinking down the road, like he's saying, why do I have to make people do boxing unboxing every single time I'm trying to understand the value of this node?
Yes, something like this.
Like assume that your type is saying this is an integer, but your value is saying 5.
That's my thought. But it's based on my knowledge of the OData current OData implementation.
Yeah.
So I'd like to learn from you, from Nico and from Paul, and based on the currently structure, and to understand the logic. How, if I am the developer,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do? What's the easy way for me to develop the application based on the old node?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So that's my point. Um, we
You mean
can
for
we
you
can
mean for
continue to push
extension,
it.
right?
Yeah,
Sam, you mean for extension, right? So, let's say I'm a developer and I want to extend OData Neo. I want to add my own services and my own work, right?
yeah.
So I don't expect, and this is why we
One of
call
the
it. uh, uh,
extensibility.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
that's my
understand. I'm with you 100%. This is why Paul and Nick, they were talking about tokenization, right? They're basically saying we're not going to do much as long as you're staying true to the OData protocol in terms of, the ANDing and the ORing and, dollar sign and all that. We will build you a model that has all of that data in it, and then it's up to your service to consume that contract and do whatever it wants with it, right? So if we stay true to this O node contract and it's generic enough
Oh
to
no.
what was
Oh,
it?
like the joke from last time. Oh no.
Oh no, yes,
no,
yes,
no.
yes,
Yes,
yes, yes, yes. So I guess let's just try that. Okay, let's just take that raw
yeah,
string.
yeah,
I mean,
I
I'm
think Sam's
go
point
ahead.
about boxing and unboxing.
Yeah,
So we're passing in a string here, and all
yeah,
we're doing is effectively a smart string dot split, really.
yep.
And so at this point, we're not boxing or unboxing potentially anything that potentially might
Not
come
just
in.
yet. Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's probably more of like the on the other end of it, the bit that we're not focusing on right now, which is the taking the bits that we've got from our nodes and
Mm-hmm.
turning them into the thing that's in the language. So if we know that the node has a value in there that needs to map to, I don't know, an integer ID or something in an expression,
Mm-hmm.
then we will know at that point, okay, there's some parsing that potentially needs to be done here because I've got a string representation of an integer value. So at
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
point, I would do an int.parse as part of my expression building, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
Yep. Let me
But
just
at
try
this
it.
point, we're
Mm-hmm.
just taking the raw value and saying it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to see what that would look like. So you have a bunch of children, and
Mhm.
if we can visualize it, it'll help us a lot. Like if you say type here, and let's say your type is a select query, for instance, or something like that, right? And then let's say the value is null. You have nothing here in the value, so this is null. And then you could go in here and say you have children again under this one, and under the
Yeah, I would
children.
I would
uh,
say that the type is parameter because it's a thing that you're pulling from the URL, and the value is $select.
Okay. Okay, that's fine too. So like this. Oh, so your raw query value. That's what you're looking at. Okay, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm
every
okay with
every
that.
piece of this, the value property is a piece of the actual
Hmm.
URL
Hmm.
throughout the model, all the way down. So you remember when we were talking about toString 2 minutes
Hmm.
ago?
Hmm.
If I
Hmm.
do that toString, I get that piece of the
Hmm.
actual URL back because all I'm effectively doing is saying, "Hey, return value
Yep.
dot toString."
I'm sorry, did I
Okay.
miss something? Isn't that O clause? What I just
What?
like half
Tell
an
me.
hour ago.
Yes, yes, but hang tight, hang tight. Let me just get to this and let's just see. This is here. This will be type, right? So we said select, right? And you have the select, but under that select, you don't even have children in this one. You actually have so if you consider this whole thing as one node, right, you guys? If you consider this whole thing as one node, and at the top of this node there is the clause, which is what Nick just talked about, then underneath that you would have something like type would be operator, right? And then on that type you have the value would be equal, something like this, or we could hard code that. We could make it equal, as in spelled out equal as an enum, and then you have there's no children for this one, so this one just goes like this, and then let's go back in here, and then you have type. What do you guys called it? Constant, and then in here the value would be the value. Oh wait, you said this would be a property, right? Like this. And then the value here would be a name. Something like this. Does that work? Does that look right?
You need nesting. Unless I can't recall, but like I'm almost positive that order operations is not guaranteed to be linear.
No, I understand. Like, let's say, look, for instance, instead of this let's say you're doing,
Oh, you're
let's
just
say,
saying have no. Just like forget about. Yeah, no, that's
no, wait a second. You know, you could go here and say, let's say this is an in operation, right? Or let's say you're doing select, and inside this property name, you want to add in another child in here. Check this out. You could have a child in here, and this child itself is of type another, let's say, filter query. And underneath that guy has a value that says filter, like this, and then underneath that guy you have children. So now you're nesting underneath the existing one, and you're adding more nodes there. That's the nesting that you're talking about. That would make this guy look like this. Select name, and then going here and saying filter whatever. You know, let's say age, equal, 10 or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
What's
that's
wrong
what I
with
was
that?
talking about earlier when we were talking about processing it left to right effectively and treating it like a flat
Yeah,
thing.
so-
And I said, hey, by definition, you actually have a tree, right?
Yeah,
In this case, can you go to the second filter? So we have
Yes.
the equal
yeah, let me take
operator.
this out. Yep. So
Yeah.
you have the and here, right? You have this
Yeah.
and here, right? And this and will always be and, Sam, right? Because this is you're combining a bunch of OData clauses together. You know, it will never be and or as in spelled out, because that's not part of a query. But then you would go like this and take this whole guy like this, and I would go here and say this. This is my guy. Oh shoot, hold on. So this is, yeah, this is this guy, and then this guy is what? Filter. So this would be filter query, and this would be $ filter, and then this is an operator, and I'm saying my operator here is called EQ. This is why we need to kind of
No, not
normalize.
EQ.
Why?
You have the sign, same as the line 29.
Like this? That's fine too. And
I-
then
I
Yeah,
I
wonder
because you have the same sign on the 29 line 29, 29.
this guy here. Yeah,
Yeah.
we could do that.
You know,
I-
you put the sign.
I
Not
wonder if
EQ.
for parameter nodes, this is why I suggested using parameter. It was kind of a special case, and you can omit the equals because a parameter is always equal to something, right? You can't say a
Oh.
parameter is
So
greater
what's
than
the
or less
meaning
than.
of the line 29 is the equal sign? It's a sign after the $select.
Yeah.
It's this
Yeah,
sign here.
sorry. Sam's talking about the name equals, so the EQ bit. Yeah.
Oh,
So the
wait.
EQ and the
No, Sam
sign,
is
the
right.
equal
Sam is
sign
right.
is totally different.
That's
Yeah.
right. We don't even need that, you guys. This can go
Yeah.
away.
So I would omit those, but then
Yes.
the EQ
So
is a node.
That's
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah.
So you omit those here, but this here would be EQ.
No. That one would go after. Sorry. Yeah. It goes before Sam, but after another node, which would be the name. Yeah.
That's right.
Name.
That's right. Yep. Good
That's
catch.
it.
Yep. And this would be a property, and this guy would be name, like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you put another string after the name?
Yeah.
So
What
for
do you want
example,
to do? And
yeah.
Hassan,
So the
like
age,
this.
no, not another clause. So
Like
age
this.
and no, not just and.
And
What's
okay.
Yeah.
the
He's talking about an OData and.
age?
Age. Okay.
Yeah. Equal 10.
Like this, right?
Yeah. So can you do that again?
Yeah. So we can go here and say, okay. So you have these children under filter.
Yeah. It's the same level.
Right.
So you have to put
I see.
the
I see what you're doing. So this would be because you need to actually pass this itself as
Yeah.
something, right? I see what
Yeah.
you're trying to do here.
So you
So
first have the children called and.
No. I would say that's another node at the same level. That's still part of your
Another
filter
node,
clause.
but it's a children of the, it's a child of the filter query.
see, that's why
It's-
that's why originally I said if you treat it as a flat line, watch this. I can just go here and say, okay, and then this is a type, right? And let's say this is an operator or whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
this the value here. Look at this, Sam, and then I
And
can go down here, and here you go, another one that says property age, right? Equal, there it is, age equal 10. What's wrong with that? See,
What's the
now you
left side for the and? What's the right side for the right?
so
The
the
left
left
side
side.
of the and.
So if you honor that sequence of
So
how
you mean
we
the order, it doesn't matter.
the order here matters.
It doesn't matter.
Why it doesn't matter?
I mean, in this case, the order does matter. That's why
Yes,
we don't know. So
Yeah.
if you have another
you would parse it in the order it's defined, right, Sam?
So
Yeah,
so hang on a second. We're trading off the complexity of a tree with order. That seems like a good deal to me. What do you think, Sam? Paul, Nick checked out. Nick said you guys are crazy. You don't want clauses.
No, I mean, it's a circular conversation. You know, we talked about this, and you know, I see Sam is kind of bringing back in, you know, the pieces of the conversation where we kind of compared this to link expressions, right? Where
Yeah,
you have a more strongly typed structure to kind of you know, for operator, you know, for the type of expression that you have, but also has a common core that allows them to be nested within each other. So at this point, we come full circle.
Yeah,
right.
I tried to say the name equals Sam
Mhm.
is a child of and. Age equal 10 is child of and. It's not
That's the
child
tree
of
structure.
filter clause.
Okay, I agree.
It's a
Paul, I'm gonna hold on your side for a second. I'm gonna pause. Not pause.
some
Mute for a
noise.
second. Yeah. So
Okay.
so listen to me. That's the existing OData implementation in terms of
Yes.
tree structure, right?
Yeah.
What does this have?
Hmm.
Like the existing OData implementation will not care about the order because you're already building that order in terms of tree branches and all that, and you're honoring the execution this way. But what if you just flatten it, brother? Like
Yeah,
just
flatten. Yeah.
flatten it. And then honor the order and you're done. What's wrong with that? That's literally what I call reconceptualization. Like I'm
Yeah,
picking
I
up.
totally agree with that. It's flattened, but in this case, we have to make sure the order does matter.
Okay, yeah, we can do
Yeah.
that.
So if you change the order, it changes the meaning.
Of course.
Yeah.
Isn't that how the mathematical equations work? Like if you go to a mathematician and say 1 plus 2 plus 5 multiplied by 2, they will tell you it is one flat.
PEMDAS will not save you here.
It won't? You don't think so?
I'll send it in the Discord. There's a fabulous TikTok that talks exactly about this problem, right? And how
Okay, using TikTok
if you change the 2 to a multiplication, or rather the 2 plus no, that one, yeah. There's a whole thing. Like context is exceptionally important in this. He goes into it. I'll put it.
Okay, using TikTok
can define
automatically
it if you
disqualifies you from this community.
All right.
No, I'm just messing with you. Send it, please. Please
In
send
your
it.
example, the parenthesis doesn't require it, but if you put the parenthesis before 2 and after 5,
Like
the
this.
first 2. No.
Oh, the first 2 like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like now it matters because now it will execute. It will first
the
execute
plus,
the multiplication,
the adder first,
and then the
addition
addition.
First. No.
Yeah.
Move the end parenthesis after 5.
Okay, like this. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I failed math twice. I just want to let you, and for the people watching us, you don't have to know math to be an engineer. You know, Sam is pretty good at math. I know that. I know the guy personally. He's good.
No.
But you know, the anyway, listen, let's pick this tomorrow and tokenize this way, please. This will work. This might work. It's not too bad. Also, the tree structure that you're talking about, Sam, it doesn't have to be completely out of the box. It could go down to a foundation service or a broker
Mhm.
that will care about these things
No.
and say, no, well, I'm gonna structure it like a tree. And
Yes,
that's the
that's
part. Go ahead.
also a tree. It's a big tree. It's a flattened tree.
It's a flattened tree. It's a tree
Yeah.
that we went with the
It,
chainsaw and we just cut it off.
yeah, it's a
It
tree.
only matters when you come to processing, turn
Yes.
it into an expression, right? So
I-
here we're aiming for like for like. The query is defined as this structure. Beyond that, we don't care.
Now, the real question to you guys is, and we're gonna talk about this tomorrow, hopefully, because we're half hour over, but you know, this is just really fun. This is how engineering works. You know, you just go back and forth. We're gonna talk a little bit about, using enums to kind of control these values and these values, the types and values. How is that gonna look like? Let's talk about that, in our session tomorrow, and let's start pushing some code. Sam, we're gonna write some failing tests. We're gonna make them pass. We're gonna see how we're gonna parse these strings.
Yes,
Hopefully we'll
that's
be
what I want to learn from you. How to
okay.
write the failing part test case and how to make it a success part test
That's
part.
the only thing I'm good at. And I'm
I
more
was
than
gonna say
happy.
Sam was low key throwing shade, saying that the only thing you know how to do is write test to fail.
That's literally
Wait,
and he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I mean, I wrote a book about this, so I better be good at it, right? It's
The only
like
thing I know how to do
someone
is make tests is make tests fail.
someone came to me the other day and said to me, well, this is what you said in this chapter. I said, well, I teach this shit. I never said I know how to do it. I just tell people how to use it. But anyway, absolutely. Listen, guys, this has been fun. I really appreciate at least we have at least we have a place to start. Just so understand this. I don't care if we go down the road like 2, 3 weeks down the road in implementation and go and say, oh, you know what? We were wrong. Let's go back. The question that Sam asked me, when we first started this project, he said, "Listen, man, your deadlines are crazy. This is not gonna happen." I said, "Don't guess what? I own the deadlines and I'm gonna extend them. I don't care. The only difference here is that technically I'm playing PM for this project. I'm also writing code. So I know, oh yeah, that's actually Nick. Yeah, that's right. But technically if the people writing the code, and this is by the way how I do it even inside Microsoft, engineering manager, I write code with my team. So when they say this is hard, I know that it's hard. I am there. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. Back to the thing that, Paul was talking about earlier, which I can very, very strongly relate to. I appreciate all of you today. Thank you so very much. And let's connect tomorrow. Sam, do you want to hang out with us tomorrow? I know Paul has the advantage of being overseas, so he gets to be like, I'm done with work. I get to just chill out, you
But
know.
I have to say, today is Chinese Spring Festival. The Chinese New Year.
Congratulations. I wish you the best. Today is the day.
Yeah, today is the
Okay,
day.
let's go out and celebrate. Let's eat Thai food or something.
Maybe. But I
Let's,
try to say
uh,
Happy Chinese New Year.
happy
And
Chinese New Year to
Happy
you
Lunar
too,
New
and
Year.
sir. I
I want
appreciate
to
it, Sam.
say in Chinese to the YouTuber maybe is from China.
Yes,
新年
there's
快
so
乐，
many.
健康，快乐健康。Can
You're
you
gonna have to
understand the Chinese?
you're gonna have to teach me how to say that. I know how to say ni hao. Is that right?
你
Ni
好
hao?
yes, yes, it's
Ni
hi,
hao.
it's hello, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's going?
And I know how to say,
I know that.
if you're hungry, you can just say that means I'm
饿
hungry.
饿了。
That's it. I'm hungry. I
Yeah.
love it. It's very expressive. It just tells you I'm hungry. Like if you don't feed me right now. I know out of almost 6,000 subscribers on YouTube, someone there is gonna be from China, and they're gonna really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Sam. So
Yeah.
thank you, Nick. Thank you, Paul. You guys are awesome. Let's talk tomorrow, okay? Talk
Thank
to you
you.
guys.
Happy Lunar New Year, Sam.
Take care,
Thank you.
Sam.
Bye-bye.